Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today, we explain Genesis chapter 23 in a clear and simple way, step by step.
Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a truly fascinating, almost hidden turning point in the biblical narrative. If you've been following the story of the patriarchs so far, you know it's completely filled with sweeping journeys, massive promises from God, and these huge dramatic events. But today, the focus narrows down to a very specific, deeply personal, and highly legal moment. We're going to be doing a complete step-by-step breakdown of Genesis chapter 23. And here's the thing. This isn't just a chapter about a funeral. It is actually the detailed historical account of the very first piece of the promised land that is legally and officially purchased and owned. So the absolute crucial point for us today is understanding exactly how this transaction unfolds.
Section 1. Context in Sarah's passing. The end of an era. Well, to truly grasp the sheer weight of this chapter, we've got to establish the context first. We are stepping into a profoundly solemn moment here. A major era is coming to a close. Think about it. Abraham and Sarah have been through literally everything together, leaving their homeland, navigating brutal famines, dealing with foreign kings, and finally, miraculously having their son, Isaac, in their old age. But now, that shared earthly journey is ending. The chapter just begins directly with the hard facts. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Notice the incredibly precise detail in the text right there. Sarah is actually the only woman in the entire Hebrew Bible whose exact lifespan is recorded like this. It really highlights her immense importance to the story. And then we see Abraham's reaction. He goes to mourn for her and to weep over her. You see, in the ancient Near East, mourning wasn't just this silent internal feeling you kept to yourself. It was a highly physical, very visible process. Abraham is this powerful, wealthy leader, yet right here we see him in a state of raw, profound physical grief over the loss of his lifelong partner. Now, the text makes a very deliberate point to tell us exactly where this happens. Kiriath Arba, which the text clarifies for later readers, is the city of Hebron, located in the land of Canaan. So why does that matter? This geography is absolutely central to the whole story. Why? Because God had promised the entire land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants. Yet, as Abraham stands over his deceased wife, a pretty stark reality sets in. He is living right in the middle of the promised land, but he doesn't actually own a single square inch of it. Not even enough dirt to bury his own wife. Legally speaking, he is entirely landless. And honestly, what happens next brilliantly illustrates Abraham's character. He experiences this profound grief, right? He weeps, but he doesn't stay paralyzed by it. The text says, "Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites." He moves straight from mourning into necessary action. Now, the Hittites, who are also called the sons of Heth in the text, are the local people who currently control the territory. Notice the specific language Abraham uses with them. "I am an alien and a stranger among you." The Hebrew concept here is essentially a resident alien. That's someone who lives in the community peacefully, sure, but they absolutely do not have the legal rights of a citizen, specifically the right to own land. Because he's a foreigner, he can't just go out to an empty field somewhere and dig a grave. He has to humbly petition the local authorities to grant him the legal right to purchase real estate. Section 2. The Hittite negotiation, an ancient custom. Okay, what follows in the text is basically a masterclass in ancient Middle Eastern cultural exchange. It is this highly formal, incredibly polite back-and-forth dialogue between Abraham and the local leaders taking place right at the city gate. But before we read the exact verses, let's map out the structure of this ancient negotiation dance because it's fascinating. First, the buyer makes a general request. Second, the sellers respond with overwhelming, almost exaggerated generosity, offering to let him just use whatever he wants. Third, the buyer declines that general offer and zeroes in on a highly specific request, absolutely insisting on paying. And fourth, the seller feigns that money doesn't matter at all between friends, but then casually drops a massive asking price. This is exactly the protocol Abraham and the Hittites are following here. It's polite, it's public, and make no mistake, it's highly strategic. So let's look at step 2 of that little dance. The Hittites reply to Abraham's request for property by saying, "Sir, listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead."
Now, on the surface, they are being incredibly respectful, right? They literally call him a mighty prince or a prince of God. But listen very carefully to what they are actually offering him. It sounds super generous, but they're basically saying, hey, just use any of our tombs. They are actively avoiding giving up any actual real estate. They are perfectly happy to let him borrow a grave, but they definitely do not want to grant permanent land ownership to a foreigner.
But Abraham, he completely understands the cultural game being played here. The text says he rose and bowed down before the people, so he matches their extreme politeness with his own. But he totally doesn't take the bait. He says, if you are willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron son of Zahar on my behalf. This is such a brilliant move. He doesn't just go to Ephron privately on the side. He uses the entire public assembly to put pressure on Ephron. And look at his specific demand. He wants the Cave of Machpelah, and he absolutely insists they ask Ephron to sell it to me for the full price. He is drawing a hard line in the sand here. No borrowed tombs, no gifts. He wants a full, legal, paid transaction.
Let's clarify exactly what he's asking for here. The Cave of Machpelah. Abraham isn't just asking for some random, anonymous plot in a public cemetery. No, he has scouted a very, very specific piece of real estate. He notes that it belongs to Ephron and that it is located right at the end of his field. This is a defined, clearly identifiable geographical location near Mamre. By asking for the cave specifically at the edge of the field, he's formally initiating a real estate negotiation for a permanent familial burial ground.
Now Ephron, the guy who actually owns the field, speaks up. Remember, they are all sitting at the city gate, which is the center of public business. Ephron says, in the hearing of absolutely everyone, "No, my lord, listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people." Now, to a modern reader, this sounds like, wow, incredible generosity, right? He's literally giving it away for free. But we really have to understand the ancient context here. This was a very formal pleasantry, and quite honestly, a bit of an ancient runaround. Ephron isn't actually offering it for free. This is just the customary way to act like an overwhelmingly generous host before getting down to the hard business of naming a real price. Furthermore, by framing it as a gift, Ephron is actually trying to maintain ultimate control of the land. Abraham knows exactly what a gift means in this culture. If he accepts it for free, well, he has absolutely no legal deed. Ephron, or maybe Ephron's children, could easily come back years later, change their minds, and take the land right back, or suddenly demand payment later when Abraham is vulnerable. So the text says Abraham bows again, maintaining that strict formal public respect, and flat out refuses the gift. He says, listen to me if you will. I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so that I can bury my dead there. Abraham is incredibly laser-focused here. He wants an undisputed, permanent legal purchase. He absolutely will not bury his wife in a borrowed or temporarily gifted grave. Section 3. The price of Machpelah, securing the deed. Okay, let's move right to the climax of this negotiation. We've gone through all the pleasantries, the generous offers, and the polite counteroffers. Abraham has officially forced Ephron's hand. He has publicly committed to paying whatever the cost is to secure that deed. Now we finally hear the price of Machpelah. Ephron answers Abraham and finally drops the number. He says, listen to me, my lord. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between me and you? Bury your dead. Notice how Ephron maintains this whole facade of casual friendship right to the very end. He essentially says, oh, it's just a mere 400 shekels of silver. But hey, between good friends like us, who's counting? Go bury your dead. It's honestly a brilliant piece of ancient salesmanship. Let's talk about that number for a second, 400 shekels of silver. To put this into perspective, this is a massive, almost exorbitant amount of money. In other parts of the Bible, we see entire massive properties, or even a king buying a whole hill to build a city for just a fraction of this price. A common laborer back then might work their entire life and never even see this much silver. Ephron has clearly taken advantage of Abraham's public insistence to pay and named a sky-high price. The expectation in this culture would be for Abraham to act totally shocked, throw his hands up in the air, and counteroffer with something like 50 shekels, starting the long haggling process. But here is the absolute surprise of the whole chapter. Abraham doesn't haggle at all. He just immediately agrees to it. He pulls out his merchant scales and weighs out the 400 shekels of silver right there in the hearing of the Hittites. So why on earth does he overpay without a single argument? Because he wants absolutely zero shadow of a doubt. By paying the full requested exorbitant price right in front of all the town elders, no one can ever accuse him of cheating Ephron or stealing that land.
Look at the highly specific legal language in verses 17 and 18. It lists the field, the cave in it, and even all the trees within the borders. This is literally an ancient title deed being read aloud. The exact boundaries and features are legally transferred. And through this single act, Abraham officially becomes a landowner in Canaan for the very first time.
And this beautifully brings the chapter's narrative to a solid resolution. The transaction is complete. Verse 19 simply says, afterwards Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the fields of Machpelah. And verse 20 serves as this final official stamp on the document. So the field and the cave in it were legally made over to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. The immediate crisis of where to bury Sarah is resolved. But so much more importantly, the promise of the land has taken its very first concrete legal step. The patriarchs now have a permanent, completely undisputed foothold in the land of Canaan.
Section 4. Key Ideas and Lessons. Genesis 23 Takeaways. All right, now that we've walked through the text step by step and really understood the mechanics of what just happened, let's zoom out to the primary textual ideas. This chapter isn't just sitting in the text as some dry historical receipt. It conveys profound themes. First, this represents Abraham's very first owned land in Canaan. This is a monumental shift for him, going from a wandering nomad to a legal stakeholder. Second, the text places massive importance on a legal deed. It goes way out of its way to detail the field, the cave, the trees, the witnesses, and the weighed silver, all to prove this wasn't conquered by force or taken by some trickery. It was legally, legitimately acquired. And third, it gives us this incredible window right into ancient negotiation customs, showing us exactly how diplomacy and business were actually conducted at the city gates of the ancient Near East. But beyond just the ancient history, there are some really practical life lessons we can pull from observing Abraham here. Look at number 1, processing grief, then taking necessary action. Abraham absolutely allows himself to weep and mourn, but he doesn't let that grief prevent him from doing what needs to be done to properly honor Sarah. Number 2, respecting local laws and customs. Even though Abraham deeply believed God had promised him this entire country, he didn't act with a sense of entitlement. He submitted to the local authorities, he bowed respectfully, and he followed their established legal process. And number 3, insisting on paying full value. Abraham knew that cutting corners or accepting a so-called freebie on something this important could lead to absolute disaster later on. Sometimes, paying the full, heavy price up front is really the only way to secure peace and legitimacy for the future. Section 5. Chapter Recap. A summary of events. So let's just wrap all of this up. We have covered a lot of ground today, all the way from the raw emotion of a funeral to the intricate details of ancient real estate law. Here is the chronological flow of Genesis 23 just to really cement the sequence in our minds. Step 1. Sarah passes away in Hebron at the age of 127. Step 2. Abraham openly mourns and weeps for his wife. Step 3. Recognizing he owns no land, Abraham approaches the Hittites at the city gate to respectfully negotiate for a burial site. Step 4. Despite being offered a free tomb, Abraham insists on a permanent purchase, paying Ephron a massive 400 shekels of silver for the Cave of Machpelah and the surrounding field. And finally, Step 5. With the land legally and permanently secured, Sarah is respectfully laid to rest in the very first piece of the Promised Land owned by the patriarchal family. Abraham secured a single cave, but honestly, it was the seed for an entire nation. How often do we refuse to pay the full price today for the legacy we want to leave tomorrow? Definitely something to think about. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.